Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here back with another video, and today I present to you my full wave review for the 20th anniversary LEGO Star Wars sets released in April of 2019. You can see I have the full collection right here with the commemorative figure sitting out front. The way this review is going to be structured is I'm basically going to go from the smallest set to the left and then to the biggest set on the right side. In this review you can expect a general review stuff, going to look at the figures and the set of course, but I also have the original versions of all these sets to compare them to. So I think we'll get a really deep analysis and be able to look at just how far LEGO has come in these 20 years. So without further ado guys, let's jump right in. As promised, we're going to start with the Imperial Dropship. So here is the box. It's definitely worth mentioning the boxes in this video because LEGO did such a wonderful job in making them look premium, and kind of harkens back to the old Kenner vintage toy line of boxes, and I love them. I've been trying to persuade myself to not keep LEGO boxes. I realize they're really a waste of space and I never end up doing anything with them, but LEGO has made that even harder on me by producing such beautiful quality boxes. So I will be keeping these, and I guess it's worth keeping these in your collection because, you know, they are commemorative in a way and they just look so nice. They're unlike any LEGO Star Wars box we've ever gotten before. But yeah, these things are just beautiful. Back of it shows you, of course, the set. You have a little picture of the old set, and then you have the line of commemorative figures as well as the one that you actually get in the set. I anticipate a lot of people are going to have a decent sized army of old school commemorative Han Solos, so that'll be interesting to see. If we put the box behind us, we have the actual set, and there's not really much I can say about this set. I mean, battle pack builds are going to be battle pack builds. I never have high expectations for them. It's a $20 set, and some people will take issue with that. I don't really want to get into the price of these sets too much because for most sets you can say, oh, it's overpriced. I would like for there to be a little bit low overpriced, but I feel like that's really a debate for another video. But as for the build, I mean, it's not a canon ship. It's not even a good looking ship in my opinion. I felt basically the same way about the old version of the ship, so I mean, I guess maybe some people will like the concept of it, the idea of having a quote-unquote a small drop ship for troops, but for me, this thing really just does nothing for me. The main appeal of this set for me is going to, of course, be the troops, and these guys do not disappoint. These guys are, I guess, a little bit controversial or polarizing. Some people hate them, some people like them. I personally love them. I think that the detail is there. If you really want to hear my in-depth opinion on these new Stormtrooper helmet molds, you can go and check out a video I did. I basically compared the new ones to the older ones, not really even the older ones, but basically the 2016 ones that we got. And the verdict was that these guys were definitely the way to go. But the real appeal to this set is this guy right here. We finally have an updated Shadow Trooper, which I'm so happy about. One of my biggest concerns when these new helmets were announced or released, or leaked rather, that we were gonna have to wait a long time to get a lot of the variants. You know, it took us many years before we got some of the most recent variants of the Stormtroopers, and you know, now they basically would be resetting that by having this new mold. But it seems like right out of the gate LEGO is interested in giving us as many variants as possible. We have the standard version, of course, and we got the Sand Trooper and that Microfighter double pack, and now we have a Shadow Trooper. This guy is a beautiful, that helmet is just I can't say enough good things about it. But there's one small critique I have. I think the eyes could maybe be a little bit more shiny. The fact that it's kind of that gunmetal gray color kind of makes it blend in a little too much with the black. It'd be nice if it popped a little bit more, but I can't really complain too much about it. Like, I get why they decided to mold it that way, and I think it's a wonderful figure, and I'm glad that we have this so soon after finally getting these new Stormtrooper figures. As for the plate features on the actual build, you can position your troops on it like this. And I guess if you're a kid and you kind of just would be using this to actually play with, this is not the worst thing in the world. Having a battle pack vehicle that you can actually put all your troops on is honestly pretty rare at this point. Usually the speeder bike will only be able to carry one or two of the figs that come in it, but the fact that this one can carry all of them that comes in the set is actually kind of cool, I guess. And the general thing that you would want to do with this is you would deploy this little troop carrying area right here, boom, and then I guess this guy would fly off and go get more troops to carry. So I don't know, it's kind of silly looking to me, but I guess the utility, like it makes sense to have something along these lines in the Star Wars universe, so I can't really crap on it too much. Also, if you're wondering, this set did come with the stud shooters. I throw all my stud shooters away, which is why they aren't in this review. I'm sorry if you are deeply offended by the fact that I did not include the stud shooters in this review, but those things are a waste of my space and of my time, and I really just have no use for them. So this set comes with the commemorative Han Solo figure. You can see they all come with custom printed plaques, which is actually pretty freaking cool. It's like a stand that they can sit on. Comes with this 2x4 that you can use to link them all together. The figure itself, I guess it's fine. The Lego instruction manual would tell you that this is an exact copy of the original, and it's obviously not because it's commemorative. It has that print on the back. If we were ignoring the print on the back of this figure, it is still not an exact copy. Namely, and you'll see this across all the figures that we look at in these sets, is that there's basically a switch in the Lego color palette insofar as, like, currently they use this reddish brown color. Before, the default brown was just called brown. It was not reddish, it was standard brown. They do not make that color anymore, so a lot of those colors that were on these old figures when they came out, Lego has replaced with their updated colors. So even if we ignore the 20th anniversary print on the back, these figures are still not exact copies. So it's kind of, I don't know, maybe a little bit misleading that Lego put that in the instruction book. I get what they were going for, but I don't want there to be people out there that would try to pass off some of these figures as the originals. Even if they, try to erase the back of it, it's still not going to be the same as the original figure. So we're gonna have to keep an eye out for imposters on the market. And now finally we can compare the old to the new. As I felt with the newest version, the old version still not a build I particularly care for. It's not a very good looking ship in my opinion. The utility, like I said, is there, but I don't know, it just doesn't look good to me. I mean, it's a battle pack build. I really just never have high expectations for these things. The play features are pretty much exactly the same between them. They both can destroy this little troop compartment on the back. There are a few things that Lego did to actually make the newest one a little bit better and honestly more sturdy. Just the fact that they used a lot of Technic here to connect this entire assembly together makes it a lot more sturdy. They actually lock it in on the bottom, so there's no like swiveling of it. On this one, it literally can just swing with gravity, which I don't know, some people may like that. I think it's actually kind of annoying. And the big thing is, like, when I just mess around with this one, the troop carrying area just falls off a lot. Like it's not the strongest connection. It's literally just connected by this 2x2 whatever piece here. And I don't know, it falls off a lot. I'm not thrilled about that. But this one, since the build is mostly Technic and it sticks in there using a Technic axle or maybe a pen, I don't know. It uses a Technic, some sort of connecting Technic piece to connect to the base. And you can see no matter how much I hit this thing, it's not going to fall off. So I really feel like that is just indicative of Lego's build philosophy in general nowadays. Like any given build is going to have some sort of Technic probably, and it really just make a stronger build overall. So it's nice that Lego sets are now constructed in such a way that, kids are able to, pay a little bit more freely with them and don't have to worry about stuff falling apart in their hands as much. I will say about this set is, well, I pretty much, didn't care about the build. At the time, this was a really cool set. I wasn't super into Lego Star Wars when it first came out, but I remember catching wind of this and I was really excited about the idea of having 3 standard stormtroopers in a battle pack. It was, the ultimate way to get a bunch of these guys. So this set is definitely very special. It's nice that Lego decided to choose this one to remake, especially since we did get this new Stormtrooper helmet mold this year. And all around, out of the sets that I might consider buying multiples of in this wave, probably there's really only 2 of them. This is the one that I'm definitely going to be buying a ton of because I gotta collect many more of these Stormtroopers. It's the first time in a while that we've gotten 3 of a figure in a battle pack that we would actually want to collect a bunch of. So all around, I'm actually really happy with this set. The build I don't care for so much, but the minifigures make up for it. And I don't know, I think this is a great choice for Lego to remake for the 20th anniversary. So let's move on. This set retails for $30 US. It has 279 pieces in it, so the parts per piece ratio is actually quite decent on this set. Well, I just want to show you guys off the box. One thing that's actually worth noting is a lot of these boxes went out of their way to kind of recreate the scene that's happening on the front of the old box, so I kind of appreciated that. So here's a view of the back of the box. You can pause there if you'd like. Let's move this thing out of the way. First, we'll take a look at the figures. You can see on the left, we have Episode 1 Anakin. I believe the body and torso, legs, and the face are all the same from the most recent Naboo Starfighter microfighter that he comes in. They instead, for this version of the Podracer, gave him the brown helmet with the goggles that come down. Honestly, if I remember correctly, from the most recent, not the most, but basically the version of his Podracer that came before this one, they actually omitted the goggles from it and they gave him like a goggle print. I'm not sure which one I prefer more. I mean, I think the print was more accurate, but I don't know, it seems to make a little bit more sense just to kind of have the utility of the helmet there. I would really have to think a little bit about which one I actually prefer. But yeah, standard Episode 1 Anakin figure, nothing too special there. He has the short legs, and if we go to the next figure, this is the one that has really seen just a ton of updates. For one, the hairpiece. The hairpiece is just beautiful. It's a new molded hairpiece specifically for this set, and the detail is just incredible. Like, this is Lego in 2019, and I love it. The fact that they went back and they made this hairpiece even more detailed and look even better, I certainly appreciate. So shout out to them for doing that. That is just beautiful. One thing that is not so beautiful about this figure is the fact that she actually is using Jyn Erso's face print. I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like the idea of that. Before this, typically our Star Wars characters, the main characters at least, get their own unique face prints, and they don't really get shared between characters in the Star Wars universe. But they decided to give her Jyn Erso's face piece, and I don't know. When I look at it, I just see Jyn. Maybe some people won't really recognize it, but I certainly do. The biggest thing for me is, like, they actually gave her her own unique custom face print on the last version of this set, the one that came with Sebulba's pod. So for them to, I guess, kind of take a step back and just give her Jin's face, I don't really care for. So I really hope that's not a trend that they keep up moving forward. But I want to say another positive thing about this figure. They finally gave her the medium-sized legs, which is correct. She is very young in this film. She's not Anakin young, but she's still short compared to most of the other adult-sized characters in the film, so this makes sense, and I'm glad they did it. First ever medium legs we have in a Star Wars set, and I'm hoping they continue that trend. There's a few other figures I think that could use it, namely like the Gamorrean guards, probably even like the Sullivan figures, for example, like Nine Numb. I think those guys could also benefit from this medium legs. So set the figures aside and let's actually take a look at the pod. Chesco Sebulba. So here we have the Podracer, and I just love this thing so much. I think this is a really good indicator of just, you know, how a build that's really a pretty straightforward design, like it isn't so complicated in its canon form that, you know, the Lego couldn't have drastically changed things between this one and the last one. But they made it a little bit more detailed. They used some newer parts here and there, and I really think they all combined to make just a really wonderful looking build. If we take a closer look at the carriage here, we can see there are a plethora of stickers on it. That's really the case for all of these 20th anniversary sets, and every single one of them contains stickers, which I don't love, but you guys know that story all too well. The carriage looks good, though. I mean, the design on the stickers looks incredible. I think that's one of the defining features of Anakin's pod, and really all the pod racers, just the various designs they have on them. So, I don't know, it looks good. It looks really good, actually. So I'm definitely a fan of that there. I think the engines just also look good. Like, Lego has really just nailed the general design of Anakin's Podracer when it comes to a lot of like the greebling and various just details in there that make these look like engines. It's kind of hard to describe it, but I don't know, there's just many details going throughout this thing that make it look really good. They have the like orange sword pieces on the bottom of it, which look pretty cool. And I don't know, I really do quite like the design of these engines overall. My favorite thing about this set has to be the fact that they completely changed around this little like energy section that essentially like binds the two pods together. They were initially using like big orange, trans orange gun pieces. For the last version, they went to basically like a trans purple bar, I believe, and now we've converged on using Palpatine's like Force Lightning pieces and this trans purple color, and I think like this is it, Chief. This is probably the best interpretation of this that I've seen, and it's so creative. I don't think I ever would have like thought for them to do something like this, but it just looks really nice. The fact that they're actually flipped on either side, you can see this side is vertical, this side is horizontal, just makes it look a little bit more dynamic, and I'm actually a really big fan of this. And then finally, I wanted to talk about just the stand. I don't know, I like the fact that they're using these clear Technic beams here. It's something they had in the last iteration of these, and they continued it with this. It makes sense. It makes this a really sturdy build, and it makes it very swooshable. You can just kind of hold this thing and fly this around your house like a Podracer. I don't know, it's really fun to mess around with. So all in all, this is a great set. I really don't think anything is wrong with this set. I think my major complaint would be, I think it really could have benefited by having another minifigure, namely like a pit droid. Pit droid would have been cool because it came in the original set. If they didn't want to do that, I think we could have had a great opportunity for them to give us a unique figure. For example, like Shmi Skywalker. She's one of the biggest characters that we have not seen any version of so far in any of LEGO Star Wars. If they wanted to give us someone a little bit more obscure, like how Wald came with the last version of the set, they could have given us Anakin's best kid friend, Kitster. Kitster would have been a cool and honestly kind of funny addition to the set. And I really want those figures for no other reason than they don't really belong in any set that isn't a Podracer. So, I mean, these things don't come out super often, which is kind of disappointing because it means that it's probably going to be a while before we get any of those figures. But that would probably be my biggest complaint about this set. I don't really think there's anything wrong with the build or anything like that. It's really a superb set. And here is the commemorative figure that comes with the set. It is the classic pilot Luke Skywalker. You can see he has his printed plaque right there with Luke Skywalker on him, and of course the 20th anniversary print on his back. Pretty standard figure all around. I feel like most people have this figure in their collection. That Rebel pilot outfit was used for many figures throughout the history of LEGO Star Wars, and it really is nice that, you know, many years later we have an updated, much better looking version of this print. And finally, we have the comparison between the new figures and the old figures, as well as the new set versus the old set. And I mean, if there's no more obvious indicator of just how much LEGO has improved in the quality of minifigures since the first year of LEGO Star Wars and the current year of LEGO Star Wars is, then I don't know what is, because these figures just blow these guys out of the water. For one, Anakin was the size of normal adults back in the day before they decided to even manufacture those short legs. And of course, the Padme figure is the same size as Anakin, and she's using adult legs as well. I don't know, just the detail in these figures, it really cannot even compare. I know some people are a fan of this style of figures because of nostalgia and things like that, but if we're being objective here, like this is the way to go. Minifigures are just incredible nowadays compared to the ones of old. You can see we also have the pit droid in the back there. It's a pretty simple build. Don't really have much else to say about that. Would have been really cool to get an update to that. Now, if we look at the sets, so I feel like it's typically the case when you compare the new versus the old, especially with this big of a time gap, right? Like this is 20 years of evolution between the old set and the new set. The new set can really make the old set look bad, but I don't know, I think LEGO actually did quite a good job on the construction of the original Podracer. Like, I know back in the day, they used to take a lot of creative liberties with the sets they would make, and there were some things that were just flat out totally inaccurate. But this guy is pretty good for what it is. This was actually a set that meant a lot to me because it was the first LEGO Star Wars set I can ever remember building and owning. And I don't know, I feel like this set can hold up today. Like, it obviously, it isn't nearly as detailed as the Podracer that we have out this year, but I don't think this is a bad build at all. I think this is actually quite a good build. And like I said, it doesn't look super outdated compared to the newest one. It just looks like it's lacking a lot of the details, but there's nothing like glaringly just bad about the old set. So I can give LEGO some credit there. They made a design of that original Podracer that, I don't know, I'd say it's pretty dang good for its time. It's also worth noting the old Podracer did come with this flag build right here, which was pretty cool. And honestly, it would be nice to get more flag builds like this. There were a ton of them in the film during that sequence, so I would like to see more of those recreated in LEGO. But the biggest difference between the two sets is, I'd say, just the construction that connects the carriage to the pods. You can see back in the day, there were just these long tan 2x plates. Then they went to these trans orange gun pieces. Nowadays, there's a much better Technic assembly there, so it's sturdy, and of course it has its own stand, which is really cool as well. I can certainly appreciate that, and it has a handle too, so they made it a lot more playable. And I like the fact that it's clear over it being tan. I think I don't know, it just makes it look like a more premium model. It's obviously, it's obvious that it's there. It's not like completely transparent, but I like the intention there a little bit better than I like on this guy. But all in all, I can't really say too many bad things about this set. I think for its time, it was actually quite great. And like I said earlier, it doesn't look insanely outdated and just totally incorrect next to its newest version. Next up, we have the Clone Scout Walker 20th Anniversary Edition. Here's a good look at the box. You can see once again sporting that beautiful, beautiful retro style. And then here is a view of the back of the box. You can pause it if you like. One thing I actually did want to take note to is just the posing of the figures on the back of the box is quite hilarious. You can see you got the battle droid in the background surrendering to the Wookiee, and then you even have the Dwarf Spider droid in the foreground surrendering to the Kashyyyk Trooper. So I just thought that was pretty hilarious. Shout out to LEGO for incorporating a little bit of humor into the box. But if we move that to the back, we can take a look at the actual set. So here we go. This set is a remake of the 2005 Clone Scout Walker, another set that actually meant a lot to me because that was probably the first set that I got for the episode 3 of the sets that came out initially, and it meant a lot to me. That was like when I was first really discovering Star Wars, and I think my passion for it was just really growing at that time, so seeing a remake of it was actually kind of cool. But if we look at the figures, you can see that we have the standard battle droid that we have gotten for years and years and years. On the left side, we have the 2019 version of the Kashyyyk Trooper minifigure, the 41st Elite Corps guy. This guy, I mean, the figure has existed for quite some time. This is a small update to it. I think earlier this year was the first time we saw it, but I think there's like some change up on the leg printing, but for the most part, it is the same as from the Kashyyyk Battle Pack, and I think 2014. The Wookiee in the middle is actually the only like super unique figure, I would say. It is basically sporting the Rebels head mold, but it is now in dark brown, and it is, I don't know, more realistic looking than the Rebels Wookiees that we got. So if there's one main draw to this set, I would say that it's the fact that we finally have a generic Wookiee that isn't the cartoony looking Rebels Wookiees. So I actually really do like this set for that reason, and that would probably be one of the reasons I would buy maybe 2 of this set. Of course, it's always nice to get more Kashyyyk Troopers, but the generic Wookiee is actually a pretty big draw in my opinion. If we go to the actual build, we can see that unlike the 2005 version, this build comes with a few sub-assemblies as well. So I'll first talk about this little barricaded section right here. It's basically the barricade you see in episode 3 that the Wookiee stands on, like right here, and then there's a bunch of Wookiees kind of standing behind it, and then there's a little turret build on the front of it. It's a pretty simple build. It's nothing super extravagant. It honestly really isn't even that accurate to what we see in the film, but I can appreciate an attempt to add something that is recognizable, I'd say, to this set. I think it's actually kind of cool that they decided to throw this in there. A little small build to go along with your walker. So not really much to say here other than this, I think, is a pretty cool component to add to like a battle scene, especially with the Kashyyyk sets earlier this year. It's nice to have sort of a complement to that as well. This is actually the thing that I was most excited for in this set. That is the Dwarf Spider droid. I actually don't have a single one of these, so I was really looking forward to getting it. And I mean, I think this is a decent build. I don't think this is the best Dwarf Spider droid we've ever gotten, but it's still decent in itself. It's still really hard for me to get past the aesthetic of this just giant stud shooter on the front of this thing. You know, that's obviously something I can change, but I don't know, it's just, I think sometimes they can go a little too far with trying to incorporate the stud shooters, and they can really compromise the aesthetic of something. I would have much preferred just for them to do an accurate looking build right there. But, you know, LEGO tries to incorporate playability wherever they can. But for the most part, it's a pretty decent looking droid. I like these droids in canon, and I was happy to get one in this set. So not really too much to say about it there. Now we can talk about the actual walker. Remember when I first saw a picture of this thing, and I mean, I just remember thinking, wow, that looks really, really good. And seeing it in person, I feel no differently. Like, this is just a really, really good looking ATRT. Of course, my biggest complaint as someone who builds things to minifig scale mostly, and as someone who builds dioramas to minifig scale mostly, is that this thing is way bigger than it should be. And I mean, most people, you know, watching this right now will probably have heard that criticisms at some point down the line. And I mean, I can see why LEGO would want to build this at this size. It's a good playable sized walker. So like, I totally get it from LEGO's perspective. It's just from my personal perspective, this isn't a set that I would want to like keep built and have in my collection. It's just way too big for what it's supposed to be. But ignoring the size complaints, I don't want to really harp on that too much. I really do think that just the overall design of this thing is really nice. It honestly isn't too much changed from the 501st version that we got, but I think that just the general color scheme, the stickers that we get with it, and there were a few changes made to this area right here between that older version and this version that make this one just look really nice in my opinion. And it's a nice, it feels very solid, especially comparing it with the older one. That's not really something I can like express to you guys through the video, but once I bring on the older one, I'll try my best to explain just why this one, you know, it just feels so much more premium, and I don't know, it feels much nicer in the hands than the older set. But as for the play features on this bad boy, you can see we have stud shooter down below, pretty standard little build right there. There is a seat for your pilot to sit in. Unfortunately, this is not an ATRT pilot, but I mean, I don't know, maybe LEGO will actually give us one of those at some point. You can sit your guy on there, he can hold on to the handles. I'm not going to spend my time trying to do that, but it's pretty good set. I think one of the things that people were complaining about is that there's not really much posability with the legs and like walking in like a walking position. And I can actually show you exactly what I mean whenever I bring up the older one. But if you want to display this thing, you're pretty much stuck to having it like this, standing straight up. It's not strong enough to stand on one foot, so you can see you can't have it look like it's running or anything like that. It's gonna inevitably fall over. So I don't know, that's really something that we see with all LEGO walkers. I mean, they go out of their way to give us these hinge pieces with the articulation, but it kind of ends up being futile because like there's really not much we can do with that articulation. So I don't know, maybe down the line I'd like to see them experiment with maybe some more ways to get us more articulation that is actually functional and usable in the toy. But that's probably my biggest gripe with this set, other than the fact that it's way oversized. But other than that, I think it is a very wonderful looking set. The use of the sand green, I think, just looks really nice, especially for something that's supposed to be on Kashyyyk. And I give this a thumbs up. I think that kids will enjoy playing with this, and people who can overlook the size of this thing will actually get a lot out of it because of just how good it looks, and just because ATRTs are pretty freaking cool. Darth Vader is a commemorative figure that we get with this set, so you can see he of course has his printed plaque on the back. He does have the printing, so you can see the 20th anniversary print on his bag. Interesting thing about this figure is that they actually went out of their way to give us the old school style of cape, the old paper hard cape. So I don't know, it's kind of interesting to see that make a comeback. It totally would not have surprised me if they used a spongy cape for this, seeing as there are other elements on this figure that they used the most recent version of, specifically the lightsaber hilt. It's not chrome, it's that shiny metallic flat silver color that they now use for those hilts. So it was surprising to see that they decided to go back and add in those old capes. So otherwise, pretty classic figure. This was out the first year of LEGO Star Wars, and definitely makes sense for them to have this guy as a part of the commemorative figures. Alright, and now we can get into the comparison between the newest ATRT and of course the old from 2005. And just the aesthetic of the new set alone, I feel just blows the old one out of the water. It looks far more detailed, and that's because it is. I'm sure it's at least like 75, maybe even a little bit more pieces than the old one. And it just, I don't know, the style of this ATRT I think is just much better than the old one. And just holding them in your hands, like I mentioned earlier, it's not something I can really express to you through the video, but I mean this one, I mean it feels heavier, and that's probably because it has more parts, but I don't know, this one just feels so dinky and cheap. Like, I don't know, you can, if you held both of these, you definitely feel like this is a more premium item than this guy right here. But as for the actual design of this one, it's pretty much the same general idea and like play features. You know, you have your walker, you sit your pilot on the seat, same way you do with the newest one. The old one, I remember, I thought it was kind of cool. They give you this little stud hole to put your blaster in right there. I don't know, I always found that amusing and kind of cool as a kid. But the other thing about the old one is that you get a little bit more options with the, I guess, posability of the legs. It's probably really just because of the feet, the fact that there's nothing really obstructing the hinge right there. You can kind of pose it like that, maybe make it look a little bit more like it's walking. I don't know, it's not ideal, but it's something more than you get with the newest one. I know that's not like the coolest looking walking pattern, but I don't know, it's something to consider. Like, it gives you a little bit more playability and posability with the legs. So yeah, that may be seen as a big deal to some people, but other than that, like, just looking at these two sets, this is, I think, really shows how far Lego has come. Like, this one just looks so much better than the old one. And the old one, it was a pretty cheap set. I think it may have been like a $10, maybe $15 at the most set. It was probably a $10 set. And like, you can definitely tell with Lego's usage of, you know, more pieces in a general set and smaller pieces in a set, you get the big discrepancy in just the overall design and aesthetic between these two builds. So a lot of people will complain like Lego sets are generally smaller and have smaller pieces than the older sets, but I'm more than willing to take that sacrifice if it means we end up getting more details in our builds, because I mean, that's what really makes them look good, and that's what makes them look like they have evolved and improved over the older design. So can't complain too much there. Last thing I thought I'd bring up for the old set is that it actually came with this clone trooper right here. Really didn't belong in that set at all. This guy, I believe, was on Seleucami. This is like the equivalent of like a bark trooper. We've actually got an updated figure of this guy right here. And I mean, this was like the wild west days of Lego, where they put any figure in any set. It didn't super matter, and they weren't going for a ton of accuracy, as you can see with just the mold of that old original phase 2 helmet. So I mean, it's not like they've gotten too much better nowadays, because I mean, this guy definitely contextually belongs in the set a little bit more, but he's certainly not an ATRT pilot. So they've made, I guess, a little bit of progress there, but not like perfect progress, in that we still have not gotten an actual ATRT driver for these sets. So maybe one day. The next set we're going to take a look at here is the 20th anniversary Snowspeeder set. It retails for $39.99 and it has 309 pieces. This is, I believe, like $10 more than the previous version. Some people may say, oh, it comes with this beautiful satellite gun build, but I'm going to say that's probably not worth the $10 price increase. But this is just a view of the box. You guys can pause it if you'd like. Here's a view of the back of the box. Pretty standard stuff there, in line with what we've seen previously with these boxes. But let's go ahead and jump right into the actual build, because I got quite a few things I like to say about this thing. So in general, I will start out by saying I do not like this set. I do not like this set at all. But let's kind of walk through some of my main gripes with it. So if we start with the minifigures, we'll see there is a big glaring problem, and that is the fact that they decided to use X-Wing pilot jumpsuits for the Snowspeeder pilots. Now, previously in Lego, like with the original Luke Skywalker, I can actually pull him out right here, the pilot was indistinguishable from the Snowspeeder pilot. There was really no difference to them. Recently, with the updated versions of these figures, they have been distinguishing them. I can actually pull aside the most recent version of the Snowspeeder pilot print, and you can see that there are actually quite a few differences. The one that really sticks out to me is the fact that X-Wing pilot has a strap on the neck. This guy has kind of like a poofy collar. And I mean, you can really see that if you actually look at the comparison between the actual costumes in canon. And then also you can see there's just various differences with the print on the torsos of these guys. The tubes from the X-Wing goes all the way down to the leg. Tube on the Snowspeeder guy just goes right off to the side of his torso. And then of course the legs are completely different. And the Snowspeeder pilot has white hands. So this is just unacceptable in my opinion. I really don't understand why they would do this. They literally haven't made this mistake since we've gotten the updated versions of the X-Wing and Snowspeeder pilots. So for them to just lazily include the X-Wing pilots in here, I feel I can't even think of a reason why they would do this. Like, clearly the Snowspeeder pilot prints are out there. Like, they've done it plenty of times before. So this is definitely a step back in the wrong direction. That is just unacceptable. I can't even believe that they included these guys in this set. But if we want to just ignore that, some people might be able to get over it. I think it's once again puzzling that they decided to go back to the old style Rebel helmets. At this point, it's really in limbo as to whether or not they'll go with the newer style, the dual molded ones, or they'll stick with these guys. I'll reserve it to you guys in the comments to decide which one you like more. It really doesn't matter in the context of this video. I just simply am going to say that I want them to have some consistency. Like, I want them to pick one. I would like for them to choose the newer one because I think that it is more in line with the evolution of LEGO Star Wars. I actually like that helmet quite a bit, but I don't want it to just end up being that one-off thing that they did before. My theory is that they decided to stick with these old guys for this set because these guys actually fit in there, and the new pilots, the helmets do not fit in there. So that could be it, but if that's really the case, I just kind of feel like that's lazy in itself. Like, there's no reason why they couldn't have redesigned the Snowspeeder if it really is the case that the helmets didn't fit in there, and that inspired them to keep these old ones. But if we go back to the Rebel Trooper that we got back here, I think this is probably my favorite part about this set. I like this figure quite a bit. It is disappointing that he has no leg printing. That's kind of a step back from the other figure, but I think this one's a little bit more accurate than the light gray. Looking at pictures of Hoth Rebels, I think that the dark tan looks better for them, so I think this is actually a step in the right direction. I do find it kind of puzzling they decided to give him the big camcorder gun. I guess maybe that was their way of kind of like giving a tribute to the original guy that came in the original set, because he had the big camcorder gun. But I don't know, I thought we had phased these things out of LEGO Star Wars. I don't know why they decided to throw that in this set, but the minifigures are really just a small gripe compared to my biggest problem with this set. If we look at this satellite gun build here, I think that's worth taking note of it. I like this gun in cannon. I think it's actually quite a cool type of gun, but this build really doesn't do it justice. It's certainly not worth the $10 price increase from the last version of this thing. I don't know, it just looks like they could have done a little bit more with it detail wise, and I understand why they insist on putting the stud shooters there, but I really just think it kind of ruins the overall look of the gun. I mean, I can really get over that, but I don't know, I don't like it. I don't like the way it looks. But this is once again a small gripe in regards to my overall giant gripe with this set. So let's pull up the main offender and the thing that really just grinds my gears about this set. So I want to start off by saying that this Snowspeeder build, it is not a bad build. It in itself is not inherently bad. My biggest issue is the fact that it remains mostly unchanged from the version of the Snowspeeder, I guess, that we got in 2004. It has been 15 years since then, and it still has the same basic design. It still uses the same cockpit mold, same window piece right behind it, same general shape of the Snowspeeder. It just seems very uninspired and lazy, in my opinion. We've seen LEGO make some pretty considerable updates to a lot of the vehicles that we have, and this guy just seems to be lagging behind. With the frequency that we get Snowspeeder sets, you would think that they would maybe do a little bit more to make sure that it ends up getting just, you know, some decent updates and kind of evolves. But like, if you line this up with like the most recent like 2 or 3 Snowspeeders, you would really have to look hard to try to distinguish the two, assuming that they don't have like the orange markings on the sides. And I mean, this one is a slight improvement over the last one. I'm not going to say that it's completely the same, but once again, there are just so many things they could be doing better about the Snowspeeder, and I'll tell you a few. I think this cockpit piece has to go. This has been in use since the beginning of LEGO Star Wars, and it resembles no cockpit in the entirety of the Star Wars universe, so we just need to get rid of it. It's not not accurate. It really just doesn't work for the Snowspeeder. I think that just the entire front of this build also just doesn't look good. It could use a lot of work. I can actually pull up a picture of a few mocks of Snowspeeders that I think capture the front of this build much better than this set does. And I always have to add this disclaimer. I understand LEGO can't always produce sets that are aesthetically pleasing the way that mocks are, but I think that they could definitely do a better job at just trying to evolve this thing. Like, it's just mostly unchanged. I mean, I haven't built one of these in like 10 years because I just kind of refuse to build LEGO Snowspeeders. But I mean, building this just felt like the same old. It just took me back to those days of all the other LEGO Snowspeeders that I've built, and it's just mostly unchanged. I don't like it at all. I think that this is definitely the weakest link in this 20th anniversary line, where some sets in this line are like vast improvements over the originals. I think that this guy is just a look at, you know, how LEGO could maybe be doing a few things better in regards to just improving some of the models. I generally think they're pretty good at that, but for whatever reason, Snowspeeder seems to be lagging behind. So it does have, you know, the usual Snowspeeder play features. You got the tow cable in the back, you got your stud shooter, boom, take down whole empire by yourself. These flaps come up, and, you know, just typical Snowspeeder stuff we've always gotten on it. All the, you know, usual bells and whistles are there, but I just think this thing is just very uninspired, unoriginal, and LEGO can definitely make a much better model of a Snowspeeder than this at this scale, especially for the price of $40. For $40, I would expect a vast improvement over the last one, but it's just still most of the same old stuff. So that's really all I gotta say about this garbage. The commemorative figure that comes in the set is probably the best one that we get. It is the Cloud City Lando, and whenever they first announced they were going to be doing these figures, I was especially excited for this guy, mainly because his like original counterpart is quite a rare figure. It is super expensive, can run you like $90. So I was hoping that worst case scenario, it would include the original cape, because that's really where the bulk of that price comes from. And I'm sad to inform you all that that is not the case. This cape is not the new spongy cape, but it is also not the old paper cape. I guess it's somewhere between them. I don't really even know how to describe it. It feels like softer than the paper cape, but it's not as soft as the spongy cape. But I don't know, that's kind of disappointing. I would have preferred if they had, you know, tried their best to really replicate that original cape, because it is so expensive on the aftermarket. But you're not going to be passing this guy off as the original in any sense of the phrase. Also, it's worth noting that the head and arms are also not the same as the original figure. Original figure used the brown Lego color. This guy is using the reddish brown, newer color in the Lego palette, so that's worth noting. If you raise his cape up on the back, you can see his 20 years print on there. Pretty standard stuff. So yeah, once again, this is not an exact copy of the original figure. In fact, almost every element on this is different from the original figure, outside of the hairpiece and the pants, I suppose. But still a cool figure to have. It looks close enough to that original Cloud City figure. And what this basically means is I'm still going to have to shell out those big bucks to get that original Cloud City Lando. And for those of you that are still curious as to whether or not the Snowspeeder can fit the pilots with the bigger, newer, dual-molded helmets, you can see I loaded in Biggs Darklighter and our boy Luke Skywalker. They have the new helmets. You try to close the cockpit, nope, not going to work. It actually stays open a considerable amount. Even if you take out Biggs from the back and you try to lean Luke back as far as you can, the cockpit still cannot close completely. So I think it's safe to say that the reason LEGO decided to stick with the old helmets for this set is because these guys don't fit in it, which, once again, like, that's such a silly reason to go back to the old helmets. Like, just redesign the thing. I mean, that cockpit piece is pretty worthless in my opinion. And now, once again, we can compare the new to the old. We got the original figures from the 1999 Snowspeeder right here on the right side, the figures from the newest Snowspeeder on the left side, and once again, I mean, the quality of minifigures nowadays is just untouched. It's a shame that these aren't the minifigures that belong in this set, but I'm not going to harp on that for too long. If you just want to compare these two figures, or two groups of figures as they are, you can see that the new ones just have so much more detail. The leg printing certainly adds a lot, especially to the X-Wing jumpsuit. And if you look at the Rebel Troopers in the back, you can really just see how much nicer this guy looks than this guy. The accuracy on this one is just so much better than the old guy with a random red emo fringe sticking out of his helmet. But yeah, that's really all I gotta say for these troops are right here. We go ahead and look at the actual builds. I'm kind of disappointed that I have to compare the original. I mean, that's kind of the theme of this video, right? I'm comparing the original build to the newest build, and you can see that this Snowspeeder right here is probably the most different than the newest one. Pretty much everyone after the old one is pretty in line with how the new one looks, so I would love to have like all the other Snowspeeders here to really just drive home my point of how the Snowspeeder remains mostly unchanged. But if you compare these two, I think that you can see that LEGO has definitely made a lot of improvements past this original one. I actually do think the original one's color is better. I think Snowspeeders are better in gray. I feel like that's a more accurate color for them. But if you actually look at the builds in themselves, I think that this build definitely looks a lot better, and you can definitely see it from the back right here. The back of this one is just so boxy and relatively uninspired in my opinion. They didn't really go out of their way to make it look overly nice. And then the bottom, just that giant 6x6 skin or 6x14 tan plate there, also just isn't very flattering for a build like this. So at least this one, you know, you look at the bottom of it, it doesn't look awful, and the back of it has the details that you would expect to be there, especially with that tow cable right there. There's one thing I will give LEGO credit for, is that tow cable feature. I feel probably might be my favorite play feature for any LEGO Star Wars set ever. Like the idea that you can have your LEGO Snowspeeder and your LEGO AT-AT and use the tow cable on your LEGO Snowspeeder to go around the legs of the LEGO AT-AT, like that is just peak Star Wars in my opinion. So I mean, they came up with the idea many years ago, so I can't credit this set alone for it, but I'm a big fan of that play feature. That's a good question for the chat. Let me know, guys, what is your favorite LEGO play feature of all time? I definitely gotta go with that tow cable. But yeah, you can see that the Snowspeeder in itself, like this is the most unique Snowspeeder we've gotten. I would really love to show you guys this one compared to all the other ones, just because I feel it just needs to change. LEGO just needs to update it. That's really all I gotta say about these two. But this one definitely looks a lot better than this one. So there's something nice I can say about this guy, is he at least looks much better than the original one. I guess it's also worth noting that one of the cool things about the newest Snowspeeder, and this has really been in line with the Snowspeeders for the past maybe 2 or 3 versions, is that the cockpit opens completely up, which is nice and accurate. I don't know how I feel about the fact that the gun comes up with it. That's actually not supposed to be how it is, but I can sort of forgive it. Like this is a good play feature for this. That's how it is in the film. Whereas on the original guy, you had this side pop up like that for Luke, and then it's almost like a completely separate cockpit for the back, where your co-pilot would sit in there. So I don't know, I don't love that about this design. I think that they definitely did a much better job on like this version of the Snowspeeder, or these versions of the Snowspeeder, because this isn't the first time I've done that. But it looks so much better for that. One other thing I actually did want to point out is there's actually a really cool sticker on this build. If you look inside of there, you can see that it's basically like Dak's console, and I can't really get too close with it, but you can see that it's basically what he would be looking at kind of through his window, with the like tow cable gun at the very top of there, and then there's like snow-capped mountains in the background. I don't know, I just thought that was actually a really cool sticker, so I'll give them credit for that. My favorite part of this set is the sticker, so there you go. That is my recommendation for the set. If you're gonna buy this set, I'm gonna say don't. Instead, just get the sticker sheet from it. And now we will finally take a look at what is easily the biggest of the 20th anniversary sets. We got here the Slave 1. It has 1,007 pieces and retails for $119.99 US dollars. This box, once again, is just beautiful. Can't say enough good things about the box. If you want to look at the back of it, here we got that right here. And I actually did want to kind of pause just on this back of the box. I really just love the scene that they set here. You got Boba taking Han Solo and Carbonite up to the back cargo area of the Slave 1, and then of course we got the ever so desired, ever so waited for Zuckuss figure right there talking to Forlom. Apparently they were hanging out in Cloud City No big deal there. But yeah, let's actually go ahead and jump right into the set now. First, we'll take a look at the figures. You can see that a lot of them are the same old that we've gotten. Got the standard Boba Fett here that has come in many sets that we've gotten so far. Got the Han Solo here. I believe this is probably the exact version that came in the UCS Falcon. However, of course, he does not have his breathing mask on the other side. But other than that, figure is pretty much the same. Does not have those dual molded boots that we saw in the Cloud City set. We got Forlom back here, same figure from the Battle Pack, the Bounty Hunter Battle Pack. And of course, we have Han and the Carbonite. And the interesting thing about this set is I think this is the first time we've actually gotten this Han and Carbonite build without the actual figure that goes in there. So that was kind of interesting that they did that. I guess they maybe figured it'd be cooler to have this guy. I don't know. I found that a little bit surprising. But what we all want to talk about is Zuckuss, right? That is probably the biggest appeal to this set, assuming you already have some sort of Slave One. And I mean, Legos did a fantastic job on this figure, in my opinion. He has a custom molded head, which of course he needed. Like, Zuckuss is a very unique looking character. They have basically printed on that new skirt piece, which is very good. There's printing on the front and the back of it, as well as the back of his torso. Let's move these guys out of the way. You can see he has back torso printing as well. And the mold on this thing is, there's just so many details and little creases and rivets in his head that all look very, very good, in my opinion. This is what we've all been waiting for so long, and now that we have him, we can complete our group of bounty hunters that chill on the bridge of the Super Star Destroyer with Darth Vader. So this alone makes the set a win for me. But that's not even the nicest thing I have to say about this set. In short, guys, I love this set. I wasn't expecting to love this set, but I love this set. It really is a shame that this thing came just right after the UCS version of it. I feel like if we either just had not gotten a UCS Slave One, or if there was a significant time gap between the retirement of that original UCS Slave One and this one, this thing I feel would be looked at a lot more positively, because the build on this thing I feel is just brilliant. I felt pretty much the same way when I built the UCS Slave One. So for them to basically recreate those same feelings and when I was building this model, I felt that that was very special. The first thing I'd like to take notice to is just the overall aesthetic of this build. Let me actually zoom out. This is a really good looking build. It really does look like a shrunken down version of the UCS version, which is exactly what you would want out of something like this, right? You'd want a model that, you know, is probably more in the price range for younger kids, younger adults, and also maximizes the aesthetic, maximizes the detail. And I think this is really the best of both worlds. This thing is just, it looks wonderful. I can't say enough good things about just how good this set looks, but I mean, there's also just so much playability as well. As someone who kind of grew up on not really the first Slave One, but the one that came right after it, and I felt that that thing was really loaded with play features. I think this is just right in line with that. So if we look at the back, you can actually flip up the ramp right there, and that's basically there to store the Han Solo Carbonite build in. So you can just slide that guy right in there. And I mean, there's really a ton of space in there. Like, you could put probably a few figures in there. So if Boba's out there killing people, assassinating people, kidnapping people, I imagine that's where he would store the bodies. So yeah, I like that a lot. It's pretty cool use of that space down there. Haven't really gotten a ton of like cargo space in Slave One builds, in my opinion, so that's actually a really good thing. Also, it's worth noting that the wings are motivated by gravity. They basically stay parallel to the ground no matter how you rotate the ship. So that's how, I guess, Slave Ones have been doing it for quite some time now. This set is no different. If we also look in the cockpit, the seat does the same thing as well. So if I take the Boba Fett figures to my right, and I'm holding this with my right hand, so we'll take Forlom. He'll get a chance to pilot the Slave One, because why not? So if we sit him in there, you can see that he will rotate with the ship. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I was always amused by that play feature as a kid, so it's cool to see LEGO still implementing that into these sets. It makes a lot of sense. So putting the cockpit back on there, probably my favorite play feature, it's not really even a play feature, it's more of a convenience feature, I would say, is the fact that the set has a handle. Now, when I saw this, when I was watching reviews of the set before I actually got a chance to get my hands on it and review it, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, but I was so just used to holding the Slave One like this, or even like this. I think it was a really big deal to have the handle, but man, this thing is so convenient. I almost wish the UCS version had a handle. It just makes swooshing this thing around so much easier, and it's so fun, because I don't know, when you look at the Slave One, you'll imagine it kind of, just bursting ahead in this position. So being able to do that very easily with the handle, I think is a big plus. So I definitely appreciate LEGO for adding in that play feature. And I think that the mechanism for actually launching the spring-loaded missiles is quite ingenious. All right, now we got our Slave One locked and loaded. We can turn it around, hold it by the handle, and then basically just use our thumb to pull the two triggers. So if you can see it, boom, blow you up. Then you can ignite the other side. That is so freaking cool. Like, this definitely has to be the funnest Slave One LEGO has ever made. So yeah, I mean, I love this thing so much. Like I said, it's a shame it came out after the UCS set. I think if it didn't, this would be much better received than it is. But I think this is well worth the 120 bucks that it costs. This thing is beautiful. It has all the play features that you would want out of it. And I mean, it's super sturdy. And I mean, I don't know, like what more can you even say about this bad boy right here? And I mean, plus it comes with Zuckuss. I mean, what more could you really want out of it than that? The commemorative figure that comes with the Slave One is the Leia from A New Hope, and you can see she's sporting her back print with the 20 years, and yeah, pretty standard stuff here. She has the, of course, yellow skin tone. Interesting thing, this figure is actually not that cheap like the original version. I'm sure it's like a $15 figure, so there'll be people out there that I'm sure will like having at least something that looks like that figure in their collection, even though, once again, it is not an exact copy. It's really not even close. So if we set her aside, let's go ahead and take a look at the old versus new. And here is the comparison of the minifigures that come in both sets. Obviously, the one on the left comes with far more minifigures, which is great. LEGO seems to scale the amount of minifigures with the set size pretty well nowadays. The original just came with the original Boba Fett, as well as the original Han Solo and Carbonite, which is honestly just kind of funny to look at now. Like it seems so cartoony and goofy compared to the more accurate one that we have nowadays. And the Boba Fett figure is one that I feel really has just improved so much over time. The helmet nowadays looks so much more accurate. Obviously, there's far more details in the body in itself, and the fact that they finally had separated the jetpack from the helmet, I think made a big difference. And I mean, there's really just no comparison. These guys fall very short compared to the minifigures that we get nowadays. Wow, it really isn't even fair to compare these two. The oldest set, I believe, was like a $20 set. The new one is a $120 set. And I mean, you can just see that. Like, I don't even have to break down the nuances and differences between these two guys to just show you guys that this thing is leaps and bounds better than this guy. I mean, this guy, the colors aren't even fully correct. The general size of it is, I don't know, it leaves so much to be desired. It's quite tiny for a Slave One. As a kid, I remember wanting this thing so bad because for me, like, even though the Jango Fett Slave One was out at the time, I still just felt like I wanted this set because this was Boba's Slave One. But if I got this like in my hands at that time period, I am sure I would have been very underwhelmed because this thing is just, it's just so small and it's so dinky feeling. Like it, I don't know, it just feels cheap. It feels very just thrown together. I mean, that's of course coming in hindsight. I know this is an old set. I'm sure at the time it didn't feel nearly that way, but this guy just leaves so much to be desired. I can actually bring up the play feature, the one real play feature that comes in this set. There's actually an area for you to slide the Carbonite Han Solo, and this thing is so finicky. Like, you have to be extra careful with it, otherwise you'll break it, and it's not that easy to get back together. So you pull this guy down, you take the Carbonite Han Solo, you kind of just shove it in there, honestly. Then you push that back up, and boom, you got Carbonite Han Solo in the Slave One. Which, I mean, I guess it at the time was probably a cool play feature, but like I said, it just seems so thrown together. Like, that green plate just sticking out there looks pretty awful. I'm not gonna just like totally go all in on this set. This set is like almost 20 years old. Clearly, it doesn't have nearly as many parts as the newest set, but I think it's actually good to look at these two sets compared to each other. It really does show the evolution of LEGO Star Wars. Back in the day, I mean, they could get away with something like this. They could get away with doing $20 little Slave One. It was the first Slave One, so people were more enamored with the idea of it being a Slave One as opposed to, you know, the actual build content and of the overall design and really even the scale. But nowadays, Lego has so many more things to consider. Like, they're trying to build toys that are not only much more playable, like this thing just has so many more play features than the old one, but it is also far more sturdy. Like, look, I can hold this thing from right here. It's a much bigger set, but I would definitely say it's a lot more sturdy with the Technic construction. With this one, I don't even want to try holding it from that end. And then also just with the details that Lego puts into these sets nowadays, like, it is so obvious going from this set to this set. And if there's one thing I can say about these, I have to be proud of the direction that Lego is going in. As someone who is very much so concerned with the detail and accuracy in models and scale to some extent, like, I understand this is not minifig scale, but I won't hold it against it because it's not what it's supposed to be. I'm happy that Lego's goals seem to be pretty in line with providing us with something that is, you know, decent enough in scale. Like, it doesn't look like way too small to be a Slave 1, while also still providing a lot of details. Like, there's just so much greebling and new parts in this thing that really do make it feel like it is worth the $120 that you would spend on it. And I'm just very happy with Lego Star Wars. This was a cool way to look at the past, appreciate it, really make a lot of fun of it, and also just to appreciate just how far we have come. And like I said earlier, I can't wait to see what the 30th anniversary sets are going to bring for us. And that's going to finish up the video today, guys. I hope you enjoyed looking at this review. I think it's really fascinating seeing the evolution of Lego over these 20 years. Lego Star Wars is so important to me in my life, obviously, and it's so nice that we've been able to share this experience, what I feel is the best combination ever constructed, the most ambitious crossover event ever. Lego Star Wars is a match made in heaven, and I think we're all fortunate to have it in our lives.